If you were expecting Davy Parsons, then I'm afraid those dulcet Scottish tones will have to wait a little while. He is going to be joining us, but he unfortunately had to be assigned to a game today due to my movement of a game from last week. It's the final week of our university season, so unfortunately I had to assign him last minute to a game. So he will be joining us, but he's just a little bit late. If I can remind everybody that we are recording this session and we will be putting it on our YouTube channel. And also, you can keep your microphones on mute for us. Please pay respects to the presenters. And then we will get going in a moment. You did the introductions last week, so you all know who's to be expected. Just wanted to remind everybody that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We will be monitoring that and we'll be asking the presenter as we go along. This will avoid too much interruptions. I'm sure there'll be opportunities, plenty of opportunities to speak to each of the presenters. So to get everything going, I'd like to hand you over to Bill LeMonnier, who I believe is going to start off because he needs to go soon, and he's going to be starting talking about game management. Is that right, Bill?
That's correct. Let me get my screen up here with a screen.
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
All right, let's see what happens here in a second. All right, let's see what goes here when I start this off. All right, I think we got it this time. All right, one of the things that we wanted to talk about, you know, we talk about pass interference and holding and chop blocks and all that stuff. And it's really a thing about talking about game management, because you and your crew are going to be remembered more about how you managed the game than anything else over your career. So we'll go through some things here, and you know, as the first slide shows here, you know, we're going to be talking about consistency. We're going to talk about your image, you know, the perception that you put out there when you walk out on a field, and then communication and your professionalism. Let's see if we can get to the next slide now. There we go. All right. Now, when I talk about consistency, I really push the thing that as officials, I want you to be predictable. I want coaches and players to be able to predict how you're going to call a game. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. As an individual, you know, if I ask you the question, are you consistent? I would expect everybody to raise their hand and say, yeah, whether you're a newer official or a veteran official, yeah, I'm consistent on my calls. I make a mistake here and there, but I'm consistent on my call individually. Okay. So now we put a crew together and we take and we ask that same question. Are you and your crew consistent? You know, and again, not that you won't make a mistake as an individual, but overall, are you consistent as a crew, so that when we call a catch, no catch over on the head linesman side of the field, and the same play happens over on the line judge side of the field, can we be pretty confident that we're going to get the same result, to whether it's a catch, no catch, or incomplete pass, a catch, fumble? Will we be consistent? Because one of the things that will drive coaches and players nuts, and we've all heard this, you guys aren't consistent. And sometimes they're right, you know. If it's called a catch and a fumble over on one side of the field and the defense recovers it, now later in the game, it happens over on the line judge side of the field, and it's ruled an incomplete pass. Inevitably, the same team's going to get the short end of the stick on both calls. One time they lost the ball because it was a fumble. when they had it, and it was ruled a catch and a fumble. And now when they get a chance to get the ball back, it's ruled an incomplete pass. So that consistency as a crew is super important. And then one of the purposes of us doing clinics and conferences and film reviews is for us to have conference consistency. So that, I mean, we're always going to hear that infamous thing from the coach. That's not what they called last week, or that's not what they called 2 weeks ago. That's a coach's cop out all the time. So, but the key thing to it is we need to buy into being consistent individually, crew, and conference wise. We have to buy into the axioms of when in doubt. It's an important thing to do, and we'll touch more on that as we go on here. But it's really important that we buy into those axioms and when in doubt principles. The reality is, I want you to, as best as you can, and it's not a perfect world, I want you as best as you can to know now what you're going to call or not call. Okay. If you really have to make a split decision judgment call out on the field, you're flipping a coin. And when you flip a coin, heads or tails, 50-50 chance. So the whole purpose of this is to get as much data into your brain as possible so that when a play happens in front of you, your brain can go to that database and say, hey, here's what it is. It's a catch. It's a illegal low block. It's holding. So when you see these things happen, already know how you want to handle a play like that. Okay. So do a lot of mental practice. You probably heard me talk at clinics before about a book that was written by a former pro tennis player, Tim Galloway. And Tim Galloway played professional tennis for 10, 15 years, never won any tournaments. He wasn't well known, but his question that he always posed was, how come these other tennis players, at that time, the Jimmy Connors, Beyond Borg, how come they're beating me 6-0, 6-0 every time I play them? And it wasn't about skill. It was about mental preparation. He felt that the best athletes in the world are people who have rehearsed things and can go out and play the game in a subconscious state. They see their opponent in slow motion. Their opponent sees them as a hurricane. So you've got to do mental imagery and practice so that you have that database there so you can perform better. And it's true for the athletes. It's true for officials. No matter what position you work, think of those 2 or 3, maybe 4 types of plays that give you the most problems, and do mental imagery and practice those. Because when it happens, your brain doesn't know whether it really happened to you or it was mental imagery. It's got a database that it can help you in that decision-making process. So, but if you're interested, again, the author was Tim Galloway. It was called The Inner Game of Tennis. And I think it's an interesting book to get inside our brains on how we can perform better as officials. All right, let's see if we can get this to move to there we go. All right, now, when it comes to image, there's the thing about perceptions versus reality. If it's reality, to me, it should be easy to correct. It's black and white. Here's the reality of it. But it's perceptions that are hard. When somebody has a perception of you or an impression of you, whether it's right or wrong, that's an awful difficult thing for us to change. So it's really critical for us that our image, that we come across the best we can, convincing people before we ever blow a whistle, before we ever throw a flag, that we belong there. Okay. And as you've heard this probably 1,000 times, you only get one chance to make a first impression. So you want that impression to really be good. We're doing a lot, obviously, with clinics. We're doing a lot more, and I know you're doing it in Europe with with film reviews and being graded on your game performance, and that's all great. Okay, and there's times we disagree with a grader, which is fine too. But the key thing to it is that you have to hold yourself to a higher standard than anybody else. If you hold yourself to a higher standard, you're going to continue to grow as an official. Okay, you're gonna set a benchmark that's going to be excellent. So make sure you're doing that. Hold yourself to that high standard. And probably the thing that I watch it, and I had to do this myself, is watch out that you're not stubborn. Okay, stubborn is our enemy. When we dig our heels in and we should be realizing we had doubt on a play or somebody's trying to help us, don't be stubborn. Okay, if somebody's trying to help you, they're actually saying, hey, I'll take responsibility for this. Okay, listen to what I'm saying. So try not to be stubborn. Okay, there's a difference between being stubborn and just knowing that you have a good call and you're right. But people who get stubborn out on the field, we've all run into them. They're very difficult to work with as an official. A mentor of mine from years ago, he's unfortunately passed away now, but Jim Keogh, he used to have this saying that when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. So take it right to your last game that you ever work on the field. You want to go out there with the impression that you're green, and I want you to help me. I'll try and help you, but there's always something to learn when we're out on that football field. All right, now here's your perception thing. We got a game today. We're short one person, but there was a game before us. Now we didn't get a chance to see the two officials here work the game, but they're still hanging around, and we need one more official for our crew to go out and work the game. So here's your first impression. Are we going to select the official on the left who's signaling touchdown? Or are we going to select the official on the right who's got a ball in one hand and a flag in the other? And I want you to understand something. This is what players, coaches, and fans are doing to us. Right now, you've judged these two officials. They've made an impression on you. You've made a judgment at whether they can officiate or not. Okay. And you haven't seen them officiate yet. That's exactly what the fans, coaches, and players do when we walk out of the football field. They make a judgment. Okay. So again, I would ask you, are you going to take the guy on the left? You're going to take the guy on the right. And my guess is if we did a poll on the people on the clinic today, I would guess that everybody and their brother would be selecting the official on the left. Uniform fits good. He looks like he's in great physical condition versus the official on the right. And that. So I think it without doubt, the official on the left is going to get picked to go on your crew. The reality of things, though, is we probably should take the official on the right, because the official on the right is going to make us look better. Okay. So again, first impressions, this is life. But how do you change impressions? How do you change perception? It's awful tough to do. Now, when we're out and we have calls to make, especially when we first start officiating the sport or any sport, we've got black, white, and gray area. And this chart here, I've got them pretty equally divided. If we've got something that's just black and white, that's easy, okay? But it's the gray area that causes us problems. And we've got to do things to recognize gray area calls, because technically a gray area call means I had some doubt. I'm not 200% sure on this. And if I've got doubt on a call, I've got to, as I said earlier, I've got to buy into axioms and philosophies to help me when I've got a gray area call. And again, I can't be stubborn. I've got to recognize that and say, all right, here's what I can do with it. Here's the best I can do with it. I'm responsible for this call. Here's the best I can do with it. So if the philosophy is, hey, is it a catch or an incomplete pass? Philosophy says it's an incomplete pass. So we're gonna go incomplete pass. If it's a runner down or a fumble, we're gonna go fumble. If it, so we want to use these axioms. If we use these axioms, we're going to shrink the gray area. It's not going to be a perfect world. But one of the things, and this was through a study from years back from the NCAA about philosophy and axioms, that if you use the philosophy and axioms when you have doubt, you probably have about an 80% chance at being right versus flipping a coin and it being 50-50. Now think about that, but the first thing it requires is that you have to, and this isn't a fault, it's really a plus for you. If you recognize you have doubt and apply philosophy and axioms, 80% chance at being right. Think about that. If you could take those odds to a casino, you wouldn't be on this call today. You'd be millionaire, making money. So, and Vegas or any of the casinos would kick you out if you could be that good on your calls. So again, black and white calls, we should be pretty close to 100% on those calls. But when it comes to a gray area call, recognize you have doubt and then go with the axiom and philosophy. Now, here's one of the critical things to remember about axioms and philosophies. They apply to the official who is directly responsible for the call. So if I'm the wing official and I've got this runner and is it a fumble down, I've got the right to use the axiom. If you're another official, you might be a helper, but it's not your primary. You don't have a right to use axioms and philosophy. You have a right to step in and make a call because you know the call. But remember, axiom and philosophies are for the official or officials who are directly responsible for the call. Okay? All right, let's look at ways now about self-improvement, and the saying came out, don't look back. You're not going that way, okay? Look forward. We're all going to have mistakes. We're all going to have a game or a situation that we're really it's going to eat at us. You need to digest it. You need to figure out why it all happened, but then you need to move forward, okay? You need to be your own toughest critic, okay? But at the same time, don't jump off a bridge because of it. But be tough on yourself, but able to walk away from it. I worked with an official, Jim Filson, for years in the Big Ten. And Filson was the best at being as serious in preparation, as serious on the field. And after the game, once we did our review, Filson could walk away from it while some of us were still kind of pouting or upset about something that happened out there. Filson was the best in the world at putting them behind him and moving forward. Okay. So it can be a mixed thing about how tough do you want to be on yourself, but you need to be your toughest critic. But again, don't overdo it. How many of you have a mentor out there? How many of you, have maybe more than one mentor? The 20 years I spent in the Big Ten, I was fortunate that I had some of the best mentors you could imagine, from a Tom Quinn, a Dick Honig, a Jerry Markbright. I had people that were helping me all the time, and I wanted feedback all the time, right up to my last game on the field. I want that feedback. I want people to give me information or ask questions. Okay. The next thing is it's about acknowledging your mistakes. Whether it's a group of officials and we're doing a post-game review, if you've got a mistake and you got it, put it on the table. Don't make excuses. Try and tell everybody else exactly why that mistake happened. Because most of the time, it's going to help not only you, but it's going to help the other officials because they're going to be in the same situation. And if we can brainstorm and figure out how to avoid that mistake in the future, that's going to be good for everybody. If you're an official who's making excuses, okay, believe me, the rest of the crew is just going to sit there shaking their head, or they're just going to tell you to grow up and move on, because they know this is an alibi that's coming. You're not giving them anything concrete. You're just making an excuse. So don't make excuses. Okay. Acknowledge your mistake, put it on the table. I'll tell you another one too is that, and you don't want this to happen more than once in a game, but if you really made a mistake that you can't do anything about, and a coach is, kind of giving it to you, you want to stop the argument, look them in the eye and say, Coach, I kicked it. I can't do anything about it. I'll bear down, but we need to move on with life. And when I've said that to a coach, usually their jaw drops and they go, what did you say? And I said, I kicked it. I can't do anything about it, but I'll bear down. And I had one coach, Lloyd Carr from Michigan. He looked at me and he said, you made a mistake. Have you seen the plays I've been calling so far? I got a lot more questions to answer than you do after this game. So it's one of those things, again, you don't want to say that 2 or 3 times in a game, but if you really made a mistake, own up to it. I think you'll find more coaches will respect it than will continue to harp on you. And the bottom line to it is you just move on, the game continues, but acknowledge your mistakes, okay? And then the last thing is about who is an official or mentor, whoever, who inspires you, and who is it that you can go to anytime, any place to get help and insights into the game. So look for that all the time. Our next thing on professionalism, it's called, first thing is football IQ. Football IQ is your ability. I always say it's like think like a coach, but don't act like a coach. You have to understand this game. Okay. Example I'll use for football IQ is we had a game and the defense, the offense was down in the red zone. The defense only had 10 players. The offense, when they set up at the 10-yard line going in, the wideout was not covered, obviously, because the defense was short one player. Now, the officials on the deep side who count the defense, all 3 of them said, yeah, they knew they had only 10 players out there. And what happened was, prior to the snap, the coach came running down the sideline from the defense, and he was signaling and calling for a timeout. And particularly the deep official on that side, who knew there were only 10 players, who knew his key wasn't even covered. Don't you think he should have known, since the team had 2 or 3 timeouts remaining? Don't you think he should have been looking down the sideline to see if a coach was coming? And it never dawned on him to look to see if this coach was coming. So the ball got snapped, the pass got thrown. It was a touchdown for Team A. And when we looked at the film later, it was obvious this coach, we not only the deep wing missed it, but several other people did too. But we should have had the IQ to know that if this team's playing with 10 players and they got a timeout left and it's red zone and somebody's not covered, that they're going to probably want a timeout. So this was in the palm of our hand and we gave it away. So that's an example of football IQ. So again, think like a coach, but don't act like a coach. Ownership and responsibility. And this is something I want to give everybody from IFAF and other places a round of applause on. I'm getting a little dismayed at the college and the pro level here in the United States because of instant replay. And I love instant replay to death, but I'm getting a little dismayed over the fact that too many people are copping out to replay. Once in a while, you're going to get a game with a replay official, but most 99% of the time, you do not have replay. So you and your crew have to take ownership and responsibility for everything that happens on that field. And I'm seeing that disappear a bit from the NCAA and from the NFL. We have to, it's our game. I want to put replay out of business. And that used to be part of my pregame rep with the crew. And the replay official was sitting there. And I would look and I'd say, it's our job to put him out of business. Now, is it going to happen? The answer is no. But the bottom line to it is, I want the officials that I go out on a field with to take ownership and responsibility. I just don't see that responsibility factor being there anymore. So please continue. I see that happening all through Europe, Asia, other places with IFAF. Continue to do that, because that's just a plus. You're the guardian of the game. You're out there for a reason. Okay. We don't need to turn this into a game like the Madden football game. We want to continue to take that ownership and responsibility. And here's the other thing that to me is really important, and sometimes this gets put by the wayside. I want you to remember that the game belongs to the players. It's their game. It's not the coach's game. It's not our game. I don't think they scheduled the game because you were available or I was available. The game belongs to the players. We need to be doing this for the players, and that we should be trying to get it right because they deserve it. It's their game. And I've seen too many situations, and without getting into a specific example, but one official was upset with another official and they weren't getting along. They're working this game, and it was a critical situation over whether this was a first down or whether it was going to be fourth down. And both officials got stubborn and were emphatically saying, yeah, it's a first down. No, it's not a first down. And it had the teams confused. It had the crew confused. And it was ridiculous. And in talking to the officials after the game, the one official I said, well, why didn't you stop the game? And why didn't you get it straightened out right now? And the one official, I said, I really believe the call you made was right. Why didn't you stop the game and get the referee more involved in this? And they said, I was tired of working with this official on the other side, pain in the butt. And I wasn't going to do it. And I was floored by that. And I said, do you remember who we're doing this for? We're doing it for the players. We're not doing it for your ego or their ego or anybody else's ego. You need to do this for the players playing the game. Okay. And I say this is, and you probably heard this before. If something's wrong or something's raising a question, let's get together and talk now. Now, I don't want to have 25 crew conferences during a game, but when something needs to be discussed or checked out, let's talk about it now. Don't tell me about it at halftime. Don't tell me after the game. I can't do anything about it then. If we have an opportunity to get it right, let's do it now. Again, the game belongs to the players, not us. Now, crew communication, radios have become, over the years, become a pretty popular thing. And I think it's a great tool. I also think that we need to take and make sure that we're using them properly, but use them for good communication. You know, the best form of communication is for you and I to be face-to-face talking to each other. If we could do this clinic together and be in the same room talking, I think it would be even a better clinic. But if we can't do that, we do things like radios, we do things like Zoom calls, things of that nature. But use those radios and use them with the right purpose, okay? To ask questions, to put your 2 cents in. And that it's a great tool for efficiency, that if you're the back judge and you're 25, 30 yards away, you can report a foul to the referee with the foul, the status of the play, what the penalty enforcement is, et cetera. You can do that from 25 yards away, and we can keep the game moving a little bit better. Okay. The second thing is game cards. And I'm going to challenge you as an individual or as a referee at your next game. When you come in the locker room at halftime, ask the crew to hand you their game cards. And let's see what your guys have written down or ladies have written down on their game cards. If they put anything besides the team name or the jersey colors, are they recording timeouts? Are they recording their fouls? What are they actually doing with that crew card? We had a tournament a couple of years ago where at the end of the third quarter, the referee and umpire came, got the ball. I didn't see anybody pull anything out, but they talked for a second. And the whole crew went down to the other end of the field and they set the ball up. And just prior to the snap, the deep wing, the field judge, blew a whistle and came running in and had a game card in his hand. And he talked with the referee, and the referee called the umpire over. They called the headlinesman over. And what had happened was they were off by at least, with the chains, they were off about 5 yards. With the down box, they were off about 7 or 8 yards. And it was a critical situation in the game. And they ended up getting it right because of what the field judge did. Now, my question was, when the third quarter ended, and this is where we get complacent, when the third quarter ended, that referee, that umpire, and a center judge, if you have one, and the wing official on the chains should have all gotten together. There should have been crew cards in their hands where they were writing down, the distance, the yard line, what hash they were on. They should have been writing all this down. But we get lazy. And 99% of the time, yeah, we can get lazy and get away with it. But this one particular time, they were off tremendous by, again, they were off with the chains, they were off with the down box. And if it wasn't for the field judge stepping up, it could have been a huge mistake that had an impact on the game. So after the game, I went down to the field, and as the officials were coming to the locker room, I asked everybody for their game card. And out of that crew of 8, 6 people handed me a game card. 2 officials used the excuse that, well, I had it, I must have took it out at halftime and left it on the bench. I said, well, go in the locker room and get it. And of course, now they couldn't find it. And out of the 6 officials who gave me a card, 1 official, the field judge, he had everything written down. He had timeouts. He had his penalties. He had the score of the game as he was keeping score of the game as it progressed. The only thing other people had on their crew card was the name of the team and the jersey and the captains. And it was like, why are we even having a game card? If you're not going to write this stuff down, if you're not going to use it, why do we even have a game card? And fortunately, that field judge, he did it, and he saved the crew. So again, you're going to get complacent on things. Don't get complacent on this one. It's going to burn you. Now, when it comes to crew conferences, I was criticized when I was on the field. I was criticized by a couple of announcers because they always said that we had too many conferences and they took too long. And even my boss at the time, Dave Perry from the Big Ten, Dave would call me once in a while and he would say, hey, a lot of conferences and they're taking a while. We gotta speed it up, Bill. And I would always say to my boss, you got it, boss. We'll work on it. We'll try and get better at that. Okay. But the good thing that was happening, they weren't calling me up saying, jeepers, you had this crew conference and you still got it wrong. The crew conference helped us get it right. So you know what? You can criticize me all you want for having a crew conference, but we're going to come out of that crew conference with a good decision and we're going to take and get it right. So don't be afraid to have a crew conference. Okay. Now, as a referee, people ask me, well, how did you make a decision if you had 2 officials who had 2 different different calls? And I would say I'd first go to the official who had the flag. And what have you got? I got a block in the back. All right. And I go to the official who was saying it wasn't a block in the back. And I would ask them. And as they would talk, what I listened for was what I called chinks in the armor. I listened for that if the guy who had the flag said, well, I thought he got him in the back. I think maybe if he was saying that, he was basically saying to me, I'm not sure. Now, the other official who's emphatically saying, well, I'm telling you, it may have been your key, your responsibility, but I saw that block totally great from this angle. And the hands weren't in the back. The hands were on the side. Well, I'd look at that official who had the flag and I'd tell him, hey, this official's willing to take responsibility for this call. Let's pick this flag up. And so I always would make a decision about a flag pickup or who I'd go with on the call based on if you had a chink in the armor. Okay. Now, if both officials were emphatic and sure about their call, then we're going to go with the official who had the flag. But listen to how people say things. And if people, again, have doubt in what they're saying, hey, that might be a good reason to listen to the other official. But again, tell me now, don't tell me in the locker room. I want to know about it now. Okay. All right. I'm also a little dismayed at times when I've talked with officials who say, well, that wasn't my call. Okay. That's not I'm not getting involved there. And again, I've seen this at the major college level. And that's not my responsibility. Yeah, it is your responsibility. If you know they're wrong, not if you think they're wrong, but if you know they're wrong, you need to say something. And you also need to realize when you do and when you don't. And again, my boss, David Perry, used to do this thing about the crickets and the alligators. He said, if you're out in the middle of the Florida Everglades and it's 2 miles back to safe harbor, he said, are you going to worry about the crickets or are you going to worry about the alligators? Because if you're worried about the crickets, you're not going to get out of the swamp. Worry about the alligators. So again, when we're in a situation and do we get involved, not get involved, weigh it and use your judgment about whether this is about crickets or alligators. Okay. And if it's an alligator, let's get it fixed and let's get it fixed now. Okay. All right. I'm going to unshare my screen here in a second. Come back to you guys and you can shoot if you got any questions that have come in that you think I might need to grab now, let me know.
Bill, there was one question in chat just came up. The question was, would you also go with the official that had the flag if it's not the covering official? Good question. Okay, so it was my flag, but it was really your responsibility. Would I go with that? If the official who didn't have a flag wanted help, I'd say, yeah, go with it. But again, if the official who didn't have a flag is very sure and he's coming across positive that I saw that totally all the way, whether it was pass interference, whether it was a block, I saw that all the way. It was not a foul. Then I'm going to go back to the person that had a flag. And if they're willing to back off, we're going to back off. Any other questions?
Well, I was just going to add that, remember, guys, we've got nearly a whole page in the mechanics manual about how you deal with situations like that. Some of the advice there is well worth remembering when you're in that situation, because there isn't always a right answer, but there's lots of different ways to get in at the best answer.
And it's no question about it. We need to know the rule book, but we need to understand these, because there isn't any of us who can say that we've never had doubt when we're out on a football field. I've usually, in the course of a game, just like I'd write my penalties down, on one team I'd start from the top and work down if I had a flag. But usually 2 or 3 situations in a game that I had a question, boy, that was really a suspect hold or that was a suspect block. I would take and put the same information in at the bottom of the card, third quarter, 6:15, OH with a question mark, 72, because I want to go back and look at that and see. But there are times where we all have doubt on it. It's not a perfect world out there. So Jim, good point. We need to get to those pages and we need to know them like the back of our hand. It's as important as the rules. One other comment. Last week, when we did the video on targeting, we had requests that it be, if people can copy. I did post it. It was up for 5 days on WeTransfer. I think Davey did download it and was going to upload it to the website. But I put the notice out. It was up for 5 days. If somebody still needs it, let me know and I'll repost it. But it only stays up for 5 days, and then WeTransfer drops it off. So if anybody's still, we'll do the same with this presentation. And related to this presentation, next week, I'm going to have video that's going to support a lot of the things we talked about today.
We're also recording this session, so that will be on the YouTube channel also.
Thank you, Frank.
Yep.
Any other questions for Bill before he goes? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bill. Pleasure to have you again.
Appreciate being here, and good luck to everybody, and keep being the guardians of the game.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, so next up is Frank Christensen, who's going to take us through 2022 assignments and scheduling. Over to you, Frank.
Thank you. Let's see if I can share my screen here or share the PowerPoint. Is that working?
Get in there.
Yeah, that looks good. All right. So we're going to go a little bit away from being on the field. We'll take a backseat to that, and then talk about 2022 and what kind of games that we will be looking at in terms of game assignments for IFAF in Europe. So I apologize to all of our international guests and friends. This is going to be at best nice to know, but it's really only super relevant for all of our European officials. So let's have a look. All right. And before I start, I see I put in the wrong logo, the wrong IFAF logo in this presentation. So let me see if I can fix that real quick. Whoops, no, that's also the wrong logo. Oh no, that's even worse. Here we go. Whew. Here we have the correct IFAF logo. So let's have a look at what kind of games that we might be able to be looking at. First of all, ELF games, European League of Football. No, sorry, we won't be able to work any of those because those games are not IFAF sanctioned. They're not part of the IFAF, under the IFAF umbrella, if you will.
Frank, just to interrupt you a second, we're seeing your presentation rather than the full screen version. If you could share the full screen version rather than the PowerPoint builder as such.
Thank you for letting me know. I will try to share screen instead, see if that works better.
That's better.
Does that help?
That's good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Roger, for letting me know. All right, next kind of game is the Central European Football League games that are played, in Southern and Central Europe. Unfortunately, those games are also not under the IFAF umbrella. They're doing their own thing also. So we won't be able to work any of those games, certainly, or at least not in the IFAF structure. Then we've got a new club team competition in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The Nordic Cup or the Scandinavian Cup games. It looks very promising, but unfortunately, that also is not under the IFAF umbrella. They're also doing their tournament outside of IFAF. So again, we are not, as IFAF officials at least, going to be working these games under our structure. So basically, what we have left, since there are no other club team tournaments in 2022, what we're left with is the Senior Men's European Championship. Yes, thumbs up on that. And the Under-19 Men's European Championship. Yes, we get to work those also. And if you're sitting back and wondering, well, what about the Women's World Cup in Finland? And you're absolutely right. That is also going to take place. But that is the World Cup, so that falls under IFAF Global. So as far as us in IFAF Europe, I'm sure a lot of our officials will work it, but we are not in charge of it as IFAF Europe. So all we have are these two European Championship tournaments that we have to look forward to. All right, so we've got two types of games. First of all, the Senior Men's European Championship, and this is what we know right now. And I know our chairman David Parsons is working his behind off, trying to get information from IFAF so that we get more information from the source. We're starting to get information from various national federations, but right now there will be two games in October, November. We've heard, rumors at this point about who's going to participate, a little bit about who's going to play who, where they're going to play, what dates they're going to play. But again, we haven't heard anything officially from IFAF. There are also some people who are saying that there may be games in August. We don't know that either for sure at this point. So all we know is that there will be games. There may be games. And as soon as we know more, I will reach out to country contacts, but I'll get back to that in a few slides. As for the Under-19 European Championship, what we've heard so far is that they're going to take place as 4-nation tournaments in early July. At this point, we don't know how many tournaments are going to take place. We don't know how many teams have signed up or are going to sign up. And we don't know which teams, which federations are going to play host to these tournaments. So, we don't know a whole lot at this point. So all we can say right now is that we're working full speed, or David is doing a great job, trying to get that information so that we can get it out to the country contacts. And again, if you are a country contact, please feel free to communicate with your federation, and if you hear anything, please let us know so that we can share that in our group. All right, in terms of game assignments, this has been my dream for a few years now. This is what we're trying to work towards. We want to have each game officiated by quote unquote neutral officials. Another way to say that is we want the games to be officiated by officials who don't have the same nationality as the teams that are playing. That would be the ideal scenario. We also would like some serious game fees, but for now that's just not happening. We would like the games to be assigned based on merit, based on quality. We want to make sure that the best games are worked by the best officials, so that it really pays off to work at your craft to become better officials. We want quality to make a difference. We want that to be a major, if not the only, deciding factor in who gets assigned to these games. Unfortunately, that's just not the case right now, and it hasn't been for a number of years. It's really a matter of geography. If there's a game in your country, chances are you're going to work it, and that's just the sad reality of where we are as a European federation. And that's what we have to work with. So that's where we're trying to get the best out of what we're doing. So in terms of single games, and this is the same setup as we've had the last couple of years. So for some of you, this may be a repetition, but like David just said, or like Bill just said, being predictable is a good thing. So for the single games, and now we're talking about the senior European Championship games, we'll be looking at the home federation primarily, or at least initially. So if there's a game in Sweden, we'll be looking to the Swedish country contact. If the away team wants to fund officials, wants to send officials with their team, perfect, great. We'll do that too. But initially, we're looking at the home federation, the home team, to supply officials. So what I'll do as coordinator of officials, I will contact in our example here, I'll contact the Swedish country contact, and we'll start communicating about what to do with this game. So we're looking basically at all positions. So let's say Sweden is playing England. So I'll talk to the Swedish and the British country contacts. And what I've set up this kind of a system here. Ideally, if each federation brings 4 officials, then what I would ask is then that one country will bring the referee, the other country will have an umpire. One country will have a center judge, the other has a back judge. And then for the sideline officials, what we want to try to do is have the line judge and the side judge from the same country, and also the linesman and the field judge from the same country. So what we achieve here is when we talk to the coach before the game, we'll have the referee and umpire, 2 officials from each country. When we have line of scrimmage, line judge and linesman, we have officials from both countries. And on each sideline, dealing with each team, we'll have officials from each country. Now, we're not saying necessarily that the referee has to come from the home country. If we had one game, we've had several games where the home country said they didn't necessarily need to assign the referee, and that's perfectly fine. The referee can come from the away country. And that's why I say all positions are in play, so that if you are a referee from one country, you are not necessarily only going to work international games in your own country. There is an opportunity to work abroad also, and the same goes if you're a back judge or if you're a center judge. It's really just up to the country contacts and me as a coordinator to figure out for each game. So that's how we do it for single games. For the 4 nation tournaments, as of right now, we don't know. We haven't heard anything from IFAF in terms of a tournament regulation. We don't know how officials are going to be assigned. We don't know how they're going to be funded. So it may be that each country will be asked to supply 4 officials. It may be that they're going to be asked to give a certain amount of money, and then we as an IFAF officiating committee, or I as a coordinator, will be allowed to assign officials. We just don't know. We're still working on trying to figure that out. And as soon as we do, we will let country contacts know, and we'll start working with them so that all of our IFAF officials can be informed about that. All right, now once we get to actual games, once we have a home team, an away team, a date, a venue, and all that stuff, everything will be in ifafofficiating.org. So please, if you are a country contact, make sure that all of your people have a working profile in there. And if you are an official, make sure that you yourself take responsibility, that you have a working profile in there, because assignments will be in there, game day information will be in there, all of our game papers, and I put papers in brackets because we do most of this virtually now. So penalty reporting, game report, all that stuff goes through our website. So you need access, communication with reviewers, information about review sessions, all of that good stuff is in the website. So if you don't have access, and I know I saw you earlier, Jula, that you are here, you are more than happy to help everybody or anybody who has trouble getting in there. So there's really no excuse for not having access here because you need it. And Jula, please feel free to jump in here anytime if you have anything to add here.
Thank you, Frank. Actually, there is no any news except that we already changed the layout and have the new IFAF logo, but other than that, it's almost all the same. Of course, I will upload the new rulebook, or maybe it's already there, and we will share these presentations as well. So that's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jula. All right, that was it for me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to give too much actual practical information. But bottom line is, as soon as we know more, we will trickle that down through the country contact so that everybody is informed.
Frank, there was a chat message. It was quite a long one. Probably easier if you have a look at the chat one from Mikael.
Okay.
It was quoting the EC regulations for under 19.
So there are regulations? I will, maybe I can have a look and we can, yeah, so this is. Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Michael, perhaps you can share with us where you have this from. Or maybe not. But like I said, David was working really hard to talking to IFAF management in trying to get these regulations or finding out if they're official, so that we can move on from that too. But if there are no other questions, that's really all that I have for now.
Any more questions for Frank? Okay, thank you very much, Frank. So time to hand over now to Alex Barinaga, centre judge in the SEC, who's going to talk to us about QB pass versus fumble. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Roger. Let me share the screen here real quick. Second. Hopefully you guys can see my video screen there. Let me optimize this for video clips. Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see the screen.
Yeah, we can.
As we move through here. We're going to talk about quarterback pass fumble situations, and you may ask why Bill asked me to take a review on this topic. As you may think this only pertains to referees and maybe center judges and maybe umpires, but actually we've seen more situations in the season that just passed at the NCAA level where the QB pass fumble situations are becoming crew calls, at least for various other reasons. And there's some very interesting plays here that we're going to take a look at, including one that we saved for the end that occurred in the national championship game that pretty much became a critical call that involved the entirety of the crew to make a decision. But that being said, let's start with the philosophy, and I'll start first with the CCA or the CFO philosophy, which is the philosophy that we use in the States, and we comes from page 28 of that manual, and it's number 2, and it says when in question regarding whether the quarterback is passed or fumbled, it will be ruled a fumble. And very interesting, as I looked up in the MOFO on page 50, where the axioms for the MOFO are located. Number 6, which relates to the quarterback pass fumble, is the opposite in the MOFO, where you would rule it a forward pass rather than a fumble. And I understand the philosophies of the CFO, CCA level have been kind of reworked to favor instant replay, as the majority of the contests have instant replay. But I will say this: I think kind of the middle ground of the two philosophy is probably the best way to interpret this call. If you're working as a referee in a crew of 7, if you're working as a referee and the center judge in a crew of 8, I look at it as a way that I forget who came up with this, but it's actually statistically proven or scientifically proven. Odds are that if the quarterback is hit from the blind side, or the quarterback does not see the defender who contacts him, odds are that he fumbled the ball. Probably 90%, I believe, is the statistic they use. 90% probability that he fumbled the ball. The converse is also true. If the quarterback sees the pressure coming, or sees the defender about to make contact with him, there's a 90% chance that he was able to get rid of the ball. I understand the majority of your games do not have the use of a video judge, so it is probably a sound philosophy, since we're dealing with a turnover, and we always defer to the axiom of no cheap turnovers. That when in doubt, we're going to rule it an incomplete forward pass rather than a fumble, and that's probably a safe axiom to follow, particularly with games that do not utilize instant replay. But keep that nugget in the back of your head. If that quarterback got whacked from the blind side, or did not see it coming, kind of switch your philosophy to he probably did not feel the contact, therefore lost the ball, and did not have a chance to get his arm moving forward. And the converse is also true. If the quarterback sees the pressure coming, or sees the defensive blitz coming, and is able to get it off, odds are is that he was able to start forward motion of the arm and would have an incomplete pass versus a fumble. Now, the rest of the crew also has something to play with in regard to this. It is primarily the referee's call in a crew of 7. It is the referee and the center judge's call in a crew of 8. However, there is a sense of involvement from the other members of the crew, particularly the short wings and the umpire. And it's a level of trust that you must officiate the play however the referee rules it. If the referee rules it a fumble, play on. If the referee rules it an incomplete pass, it's an incomplete pass. But the umpire shouldn't blow the whistle to call it an incomplete pass. The wing official shouldn't blow a whistle to call it an incomplete pass. That decision lies solely on the referee or the center judge, depending on whether it's a crew of 7 or 8. And that being said, let's dive into, I believe we have 8 or 9 examples of some interesting plays that took place last year in the college ranks down here. So here's our first play. We're going to let it play out in full speed first. We have second quarter, less than 10 seconds to go. And this becomes a game management problem later, and we're going to take a look at it. So you see the beanbag come out from the referee. So the referee has ruled that it is a fumble. Then he stops the clock. Now we realize that the offense has re-recovered, and the referee winds the clock, and that ends the first half of play, presumably. Now we get into the situation. We'll talk about the quarterback pass fumble situation first, because that is the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about here. You'll see here, there is no doubt that arm is still upright, not moving forward. In fact, that it's still in the backwards motion. Go back to the philosophy that the quarterback did not see that number 5 coming his way, and therefore got hit and lost the ball. But as Bill alluded to in his presentation earlier, we gotta get away from letting instant replay get involved in situations that they may or may not need to get involved in. We stopped the clock momentarily to see who had recovered the fumble. We realized that the offense had recovered a fumble. The referee rewound the clock probably correctly. The half ran out. And now all of a sudden you see we're lining up for a field goal with 2 seconds remaining in the half. And how did we get to this point? I have no idea. But the officials on the field came together, ruled that there's 2 seconds to go. We're about to let him snap the ball. Now we have video replay is deciding to get involved and take a look at this with regards to the time factor. The coach obviously is not very pleased here. Time has to have run out. The half has to have expired. How are we going to allow time to be put back on the clock to allow a field goal to be attempted in a tie game? And ultimately, replay confirms that time should be put back on the clock. We don't know why, we don't know how, but this becomes a massive failure. Here we go. We have a kick. Now we've untied the game and we're going back into the half. So situations, if you know the call, you make the call. If you don't know the call, you let replay get involved with it. But I mean, the situation there of pass fumble, we saw clearly a fumble. Okay to stop the clock to determine who has recovered the ball, whether it's the offense or the defense. If you know the offense has recovered the ball, you're going to rewind the clock as the referee did there. If a team called a timeout, that's okay if the time hasn't expired in the process of you rewinding the clock. But we're not going to go back and allow the team to call a timeout because we were digging for the ball or looking for the ball. Once we know who has it, the clock gets rewound and it's on them to call the timeout before the half expiring. It's not up to replay to come back and change that situation. So an interesting play from that standpoint, from a mechanics standpoint. All right, one from the national championship game, not the play that we're going to talk about at the end because that will probably take the most amount of time. But this was relatively early in the game, 13 minutes to go in the first quarter. See the ball goes out. Good work here by our center judge. Beanbag comes out. We play it through. Center judge goes down, officiates, continues to officiate the play. We have a touchdown. At least we presume we have a touchdown. And then again, this all comes into the game of angles and who has the best angle to rule on this. We're going to get a few looks at this. So initially we have the ruling on the field of a fumble. That fumble was recovered for a touchdown. And this is a good illustration probably of the MoFo philosophy of whether when in doubt, it's an incomplete pass rather than a fumble, especially with games without video replay, because this is, if you rule this a fumble, as I stop here for a second, it's not only a turnover, it's a turnover and points scored. So this is a very good example of probably applying the IFAF philosophy rather than the US CFO philosophy when replay is not available to you. You go into a lot of traffic, a really difficult situation to see. The center judge probably applies philosophy that he probably lost the ball. But as you can see here, that quarterback felt the pressure and was able to get the arm moving forward. So it is correctly overturned to an incomplete forward pass, as it should be. But the best use of IFAF philosophy here, especially if you're looking at this view here, this is the view you're looking at if you're the referee. You can see him in the back of the screen there. You're looking at a bunch of bodies in a pile there, and you have to make a decision as to whether that pass was forward or whether the ball was knocked out prior to the arm moving forward. So very tight call. The center judge in this game, crew of 8, has the opposite angle. Maybe he had a slightly better look at that play from that angle, and he went with the ball out or loose philosophy. So from our standpoint, correctly applied by philosophy. From the IFAF standpoint, I think you're safer to say that this is an incomplete pass rather than we're going to say this is a scoop and score for 6 points the other way. But that being said, a tight call. There you see the result of the review here. After the review is reversed to an incomplete pass, as we saw there. So correctly done on the reversal there. Our third play, again, we are in the second quarter, minute to go. So critical time here. Quarterback drops back here. So the ball goes forward downfield. So this is what we talked about earlier, that the umpire and the wing officials, they have to play this out. If they don't hear a whistle, they have to assume that this ball is loose and it is a fumble. You just can't assume because the ball is rolling down beyond the line of scrimmage that it's a forward pass that got there. And the last thing you want to do is blow your whistle and shut this down. Because if the referee hasn't shut it down, he's playing fumble. You may or may not have the opportunity to see him throw a beanbag. He may not have the opportunity to make the decision to throw his beanbag in time for you to see it. So you have to go and trust the decision that referee made. So again, let it play out. Just because the ball travels downfield doesn't mean it is a forward pass. So take a look at this one here. Ruling on the field is fumble. Quarterback wants to pull this pass back in as he sees and he gets hit in the elbow by his teammate. So this was reversed in replay. I'll go back to it for a second here. To an incomplete forward pass. Rightfully so, I would say. And this is another philosophy that if the contact alters the movement of the passer, that would be ruled a forward pass because he is still in control of the ball, even though he did not necessarily throw it where he wanted to throw it. But that is correctly reversed to an incomplete pass and should be. Our fourth play on the list here comes back from an SEC game late in the fourth quarter, or relatively late in the fourth quarter in a tight game. Offense is in the red zone here. And this quarterback does not see the contact coming. Center judge has the beanbag out, rules it fumble. So if we apply the philosophy that you don't see it coming from the blind side, you're going to be right, except in this case. The quarterback does have control of the football in his hand, and he does get the hand moving forward in his control. This is kind of the opposite of the accepted philosophy, but an interesting play to say the least. The quarterback does have control of the football. He does start the forward motion with his hand, and it's an extremely tight play. If you applied the IFAF philosophy here, you would be correct. It is an incomplete forward pass. The arm does move forward with the control of the football in his hand, and you would avoid a cheap turnover here. But that ball is in his control. He does kind of start the tuck, as they call it. There is no such thing as the tuck in the NCAA rulebook. Once the arm starts forward, it's an incomplete pass. So correctly ruled by philosophy of the CFO level as a fumble and played out. By IFAF would be correctly ruled an incomplete pass by your philosophy, and probably the safer of the two calls. And this one, even though he absorbed the contact from the blind side, and the data would tell us that he lost control of the ball. It is reversed to an incomplete pass. We'll take a look at the fifth play here. Would take us down to the Ivy League. Another interesting example of a quarterback pass fumble situation. So quarterback's under pressure. He sees all this pressure coming forward. So you have to assume he's trying to throw a forward pass. Now the question is he able to do that? Officials come together. This is an example of a crew of 7 with the umpire in the offensive backfield, something that's allowed in the US when a crew of 7 is utilized, similar to the NFL mechanic. But they come together and they rule this a fumble and a turnover. Goes to review. Referee trying to put himself back together. Take a look at it here. So the quarterback is in control, tries to wind up under pressure, sees all that coming. And now you have to make a decision. Did the contact of the passer into the helmet of the defender affect his ability to throw the pass? It may look like a fumble. From this angle, it's kind of hard to tell. But was he able to start a forward motion with the football? And that is the determination that the folks upstairs are going to have to make. You have to make that decision on the field. If we apply your philosophy, we would say that this is an incomplete pass. I think that is the lesser of the two evils to take in this scenario. The quarterback is clearly sees the pressure coming. And I think from that angle, you can see that he barely gets it off, but under his control right there, he does get the ball off. Now, did he start the forward motion? That's what's in control. That's what's in doubt. You have to make that decision. If we talk about mechanics quickly, it's not a traditional crew of 8. It's not a traditional crew of 7. But if this were a crew of 8, you got to know your position on the field. If you're the center judge, you are too tight here. You got swallowed into this decision, and you don't have the angle to make this decision as far as pass fumble. If you're wider and deeper, kind of where the referee is at the top of the screen here, you have a better look at this, and you would have the better option to rule on this. It's a non-traditional crew of 7 mechanic. I don't think that you guys use that or have the option to use that in IFAF, and I hope you don't, because I think it's a strange set of mechanics. But the question is, did he get his arm moving forward? That is the decision replay has to work with. They have to work with the angles they have available to them, and they have to work on the fundamental premise that the ruling on the field is a fumble. So unless they have conclusive visual evidence to otherwise contradict that, the ruling will have to stand on the field.
Alex, can I just come in there? Because there's another aspect of this, that if we think this is a pass, we also have to consider whether it's intentional grounding.
We do, and we will talk about that. This is a good play to talk about it, and we'll talk about it on the last play as well. Now, a couple things to consider, and Jim, I will defer to you in a second, because we have another not written philosophy, but kind of an accepted philosophy amongst referees. If he intended to get the pass off, are we going to say that the contact with the defender's helmet affected the pass, and therefore he would have gotten it to an area occupied by an eligible receiver, or at the very least, he would have gotten the ball to the line of scrimmage? I don't think you can make that stretch in this play. I think he's clearly under duress. He sees no option as he's getting sacked, and he just tries to get the ball off in this play. The next play, I think, or the last play on this set, we'll have a different discussion. But I would ask Jim, do you agree with that opinion? I don't think here he has. I think he's just trying to get rid of it, and there's clearly nobody in the area that's eligible to receive it. Nor does he have any realistic opportunity of ever getting that ball back to the line of scrimmage.
We've got a couple of paragraphs in chapter 3 on rules application that relate to this.
Okay.
So this is 349 for anybody who wants to look it up. A says, don't call intentional grounding, that is, if the passer was contacted after he has started the act of throwing the ball, or if the ball is touched. Under these circumstances, you must assume the passer intended to throw the ball to a receiver. However, B says, do call intentional grounding if the passer was contacted before he has started his throwing motion. He's not allowed to throw the ball away to avoid a sack. And the other factor that might come in here, if you can show it again, is there sufficient control here by the tacklers for you to be able to rule that the player's dead, rather than penalised for intentional grounding? So we've got a lot of tools in our armory here.
All very interesting points, and I think this alludes to what Bill talked about in his presentation earlier, is that we're kind of deferring in the States to replay, and we're letting these situations, be dictated by replay. You don't have that luxury, and you have to officiate, a strange thing, something we've probably forgotten how to do in the States to a degree.
And even if we do have replay, it might only be 1 or 2 cameras.
Yep.
20 or 30.
Yeah, this is a good example of it. This is an Ivy League game, so this is a not an SEC game or an ACC game or one of the Power 5 conferences. So there's probably only a couple angles here to look at, and I think we're looking at the 2 angles that they have available to them. So you'll see ultimately the decision is made here when we get to the end of this play is based on those 2 angles. Is there anything conclusive for the video judge to say that the arm was starting forward, again, operating on the rule that the ruling on the field is fundamentally correct, and the ruling on the field is a fumble. The only thing I would caution about is if you saw earlier, we could go back to that really quick. Let me rewind a little bit. I think it's the other angle. Is you will see the short wing official actually drops a beanbag. Probably not the safest thing to do in the world. The referee's decision as far as, or the umpire here, center judge, you'll see it coming now on the bottom of the screen. There comes a beanbag from the short wing. You have no say in this matter as to this being a fumble or a forward pass. That belongs to the referee or the center judge or the umpire in this case if they're back there. But primarily the referee is going to make that decision as to whether this is a forward pass or a fumble. I understand if you're trying to mark the spot, maybe if we have to go back, as Jim alluded to, that if we have a grounding situation, at least we're holding the spot where he potentially grounded the ball for application of the penalty. But don't. I would not suggest you throw the beanbag as the H does in this scenario here, because you're kind of alluding that you have a fumble on the play.
Couple of references in chat, Alex, to the question of horse collar tackle or not. And we actually have a different version of the horse collar rule in IFAF. So, but if you can just address it from your point of view, and then Jim can interject, no doubt.
We would leave this alone from the status of a horse collar tackle. Clearly, if the quarterback is in the tackle box, we ignore it. Clearly, if a runner is in the tackle box, we ignore it. But we would also leave this alone because the quarterback is under duress. He's just trying to get rid of the ball. From our standpoint, he's pulling him from the numbers. So that is low enough for us for it to be okay. I'd defer to Jim on IFAF if there's anything different, but I would say it's okay from a horse collar tackle standpoint that we have no foul here.
Yeah, I agree. It's not near enough to the horse collar.
Okay. That's it. So those are the two angles they had available to them. So it's a good illustration of a game with limited camera angles and limited capabilities, even though they do have instant replay. And ultimately, the decision will come back. The ruling in the field will stand, and that I think is based on the fact that there's insufficient camera angles to prove otherwise. So the ruling in the field does stand. Coach doesn't understand how or why. They put reversed on the screen, but the ruling in the field stands. They left it alone as a fumble recovered. And then now you have to deal with an upset coach. But if we apply philosophy, we don't have to get there. So we have a tie game here. We're in overtime. So the pressure is ramped up. We're going to deal with this situation here. And we're going to talk about pass fumble. And we're going to talk about some other scenarios here. So interestingly enough, an odd play. Referee rules that it's a fumble. As you can see, he drops the beanbag. That takes us to 4th down in overtime. So the logical play will be to tell us now that did the quarterback throw an incomplete pass or did he fumble? And why does it make a difference? Well, we're going to line up for a field goal now. And if this is a fumble, we're in the right place. However, if this is an incomplete pass, we go back to what Jim discussed earlier. We have to make the decision as to whether this would be a intentional grounding situation or whether he simply lost it. And if so, are we in the correct spot to try the field goal? But regardless, the ruling on the field is a fumble for the moment. So the quarterback is, or the kicker is out in overtime, lined up for a field goal. You'll see just before the snap, the page comes in that the play is under review. I'll put this up just for funnies because, you know, Murphy's Law always applies in the end. So there is the successful field goal for the moment. However, the play was stopped. And this is where things may come to bite you back in the rear end if you're a coach or if you're a administrator. Florida State actually challenges the ruling on the field. So they have applied a coach's challenge. That this was a forward pass rather than a fumble. So we're going to get a couple more looks at it. Ruling on the field is a fumble. Gonna look at it in a minute here. There we go. Is he in control of the ball? He obviously tucked the ball back down into his lower body. And when he did he unintentionally throw a forward pass? And this is an interesting look at it. Or did he fumble it? That's the decision you have to make on the field. The referee made the decision to fumble. The question becomes now, would the ball come back into his body so that he's fumbled the ball after stopping the forward pass motion, or is he still in the forward pass motion? And is that an incomplete pass? Call is reversed, but the quarterback was still in the throwing motion, and it is an incomplete pass. So now there has to be an adjustment, obviously, at the spot where that is concerned. Take a look at it one more time. They will say that he was still in the original throwing motion. So we reline up for the field goal. I believe 4 or 5 yards closer. And, you know, karma has a way of being a bitch, but here you go. He misses it. So in the end, it doesn't play out. But an interesting play, especially in an overtime situation where a coach's challenge comes back to bite that team back. The thing there from a standpoint of whether or not you played the fumble, whether you played the incomplete pass in that situation, that's entirely up to the referee. On the field, I would agree with the referee. It looked like he had tucked that ball back into his body and then lost control of it. And then when replay got involved in it, they obviously took a look at it and determined that he was still in the throwing motion and not completed the ball, getting back into his body and then fumbling it under his control. I would think there that the ruling on the field was probably the correct ruling at the time until replay got involved. And if replay was not involved, certainly the ruling to make. We get back into another scenario here.
Just before you move on, Alex, there was a
Yep.
question in chat. Says the reaction of the quarterback is to recover the ball.
Yep.
So he doesn't feel for himself that he passed it, so he lost it. Does that play a factor in the ruling?
It shouldn't. I think everybody thinks that this is a fumble. I mean, even the quarterback, I think, you know, there's no doubt that the referee thought, you know, it comes back to the fact that I don't think replay would have looked at it if a coach did not challenge. So is this a challenge that came back to bite you in the butt? If you're a coach, I'm not sure that replay would have looked at it. They may or may not have. They probably would not have, in my opinion. I think everybody would have played this out as a fumble because that seemed to be the reaction, like you said, by everybody on the field, including the players, the officials, and all that involved. So this is one of those where I think it's on the coach. If you want to take the challenge, you open Pandora's box as far as what can happen in situations where you have replay and you have the ability to play out the coach's challenge. All right, there we go. Moving on to play number 7. I think we have a couple plays left to go. Again, relatively late in the first half here, tight game. Quarterback clearly puts the ball back away, or does he? Ball is loose. Ruling on the field from the crew is the big guy has picked it up and scored. You always love to see the big guys pick it up and score. But for the time being, it is a fumble recovered for a touchdown. Come back and take a look at that, the mechanics of that in a minute. Again, in crew of, and we'll talk mechanics briefly until we get to the point where we can see it, is, crew of 8, the referee and the umpire and the center judge share an opinion as far as pass fumble, and they need to work together with each other in officiating these plays, because they have the reverse angles of each other. So they should always be working in tandem as far as pass fumble scenarios are concerned. Play goes to review, which we're going to start getting our looks. Quarterback sees the pocket collapsing. He clearly tucks the ball back in, at least from this angle, and all of a sudden the ball is loose. He's playing there like he lost the football. And here we do have an example of where the forward motion is complete, then he's contacted and the ball comes loose, and correctly ruled a fumble on the field. An extremely tight play. I wouldn't fault you if you use the philosophy of an incomplete pass here. However, if you know the call, you make the call. That's one of Bill's axioms he uses all the time. So if you see this action all the way through, and the center judge has a pretty good view of this in a crew of 8, then you play this out as a fumble. If you play it out as a fumble, you do have the option to correct it to an incomplete pass. If you blow the whistle, shut it down, we can't go back and say it's a fumble. So this is one of those gray area calls. If you see this and you know it, and you're the 2 officials back there, you let it play out. It is a fumble. The tuck was complete per se, and then the quarterback lost control of the football. So this is an extremely tight one. But again, in situations where review is not available, I could understand where you just make the call of an incomplete pass, because it is the safer of the 2 philosophies to use. Okay, here's the play. I thought we had a couple more plays, but this is the play. So we have a relatively tight game in the 4th quarter still, the national championship game in the United States. And this is kind of one of those plays where we're going to talk about a lot of things. Mechanically, pass fumble. We're going to talk about mechanically the rest of the crew, what they're doing on this play. A lot of things happen here. Quarterback's under duress, gets to the sideline, heaves this thing up in the air. Now this guy at the sideline picks this up. And the line judge is going to recover the ball. And we're going to play on and move forward. Good example here of why we cannot take plays off. And we'll talk about that as we progress through the mechanics of this play. But the line judge is completely assumed that this was a forward pass that's incomplete. The defender played it like it was a forward pass that was incomplete. You cannot take a play off if you're the wing officials here. Now the referee is running over to the line judge and saying, I had a fumble. And then the line judge haphazardly, or not with the most confidence, says, okay, if you do, then he recovered it in bounds. So that's part of the mechanics here. Excellent job by the referee you'll notice the beanbag is on the ground. So this is a good example of whether you may or may not see it in the course of a play. Clearly the line judge did not see the beanbag out. but did have to operate or still had to rule on the recovery at the sideline. And he's probably telling the referee that now. It is extremely tight. It's about as tight as it gets as to whether this is a pass or this is a fumble. Here we go from the top. Does he have the ball in his control? And now we get into the mechanics of, if it is a fumble, did he recover it? And did he recover it in bounds? There are 98 cameras available in this game. I'm going to suspect that you probably will not see, nor will I see too many games in my career that 98 cameras are available for review purposes. But the first thing is the referee did throw the beanbag out, so he decisively ruled it a fumble. So that crew must continue to officiate because they haven't heard a whistle, so they have to continue to officiate. So they have to assume that ball is loose. So this short wing official needs to officiate this recovery. Whether this defender knows he recovered the ball or not is irrelevant. We need to be prepared to rule on whether he recovered the ball or not. From your philosophy, again, this is involving a turnover, potentially a turnover from different scenarios. So the philosophy that it is an incomplete pass, again, this is about as tight as it gets. So I would agree that applying the philosophy here that an incomplete pass at the IFAF level is the safer of the two philosophies. We will take a look at this. This is a barn burner. There is no doubt about it. And if we look at this, the ball starts moving in his upward motion of the arm prior to him being able to move the hand forward, just barely starts tipping forward. You'll see there he's lost control of the football. So an excellent ruling on the field. Again, the referee knew the call. He made the call. If you know the call, it's ball is loose, you apply that. If you have a doubt, you go by the philosophy for IFAF saying this would be an incomplete pass. But if you know the call and you know, or at least you've asserted in your judgment that he lost the ball prior to passing it, then you make the call. Referee does here, goes straight for the beanbag, as you'll see here in the screen. He has fumble. So he's going to play fumble. The crew has to know that is what's taking place, and we're going to get some more looks at it. Here in a minute. Speaking of Bill, there he is. He comes on the screen to explain this at length. If you were watching the game, this is a pretty tight game. It's a tight play. It's a barn burner, as he called it, in several respects. And here's the high motion zoom in on the recovery, and that is about as tight as you will ever see a recovery. And I don't expect anybody to ever have an angle this good to show this, but he is in bounds by literally a blade of grass. So that wing official either got lucky and good, but to me it seemed like he wasn't 100% sure, and he just ruled that he recovered it in bounds. I'm not sure the defender even knew what he did, ultimately recovering a loose ball. I think he just went to go pick up the ball because it was rolling around. So important not to take the play off, because this is a live ball. I'm not sure the defender thinks it is. I'm not sure the sideline officials do either. But here's the high resolution camera angle here. You'll see the ball not in his control, comes loose, and therefore is a fumble. However, this is one of those that it is clear that if you have doubt, it is an incomplete pass, especially at the IFAF level or at levels where video replay is not available, even at the lower division levels. Ultimately, it is confirmed. Both the ruling of the fumble and the ruling of the recovery were confirmed, but as you can see, that one is about as tight as it gets. So that being said, unless there's any other questions, I think that's
Alex. There was a question in chat, which was why do replay officials get involved here? And a follow on from Jason, what instigated the review? So obviously it was a turnover, so I'm presuming that.
This is the ruling on the field is a turnover. So that is an automatic review scenario in our rules, because they'll take a look at it because the ruling on the field is a turnover. And then once the play is under review, all aspects of the play become reviewable. So even if they are reviewing the pass fumble scenario, every aspect of the play becomes reviewable at that point. The recovery in bounds, out of bounds, all of that becomes in play. If they were to see anything else that necessarily is not directly involved with the initial ruling, the replay official then is empowered to make that determination. He has total authority on the play at that play. But that is as tough as he gets, folks, and that last play there. And I would say you apply the philosophy, the safer philosophy there. If you have a doubt, that's an incomplete pass. But if you know it, like the referee did in this, had the body language, got the beanbag out as fast as he could. He had fumble. He played fumble all the way. The crew needs to play fumble with him. So hopefully you guys enjoyed some of those plays, some tight ones there, some good things.
Yeah.
It's not just referees and umpires that deal with that, or referees and center judges. Everybody's got a part in it. And it was a pleasure to be with you guys again this year.
Any other questions for Alex?
I just wanted to make a point about that last play, and
Yes.
What the thought processes would be if you were the IFAF video judge on this.
Great.
And we have a two-stage process, an informal review, which might lead to a formal review, and any official can say, I think that deserves a formal review. So the referee could say, well, I've ruled that fumble, but I'd like you to have a look at it. And the line judge could say, I've ruled the fumble was recovered in bounds, but I'd like to have a look at it. And then the video judge could say, well, look, this is a championship game. The game's on the line. This is a very important call. I am going to review it and make sure that we got everything correct.
Great. That's great. You guys have a better process than we do, unfortunately. I mean, the guys
We have a more
upstairs,
flexible process.
yeah, guys upstairs control the whole process as far as a review. There are times, with the O2O and all that. I don't know if you may or may not know, but there is an O2O in the replay booth now at the college level that is connected to our O2Os on the field. So there are times that they give you kind of informal advice on situations that, rather than stopping the game for a formal review, they'll tell us to fix a yard line, or they're able to give us numbers or things of that nature without formally having to stop the game. We kind of can chime in their ear that we have a doubt as well. So kind of our version of an informal review, but I like yours a lot better.
Matt's in chat reminded everybody that there is a video about the review process behind that particular last play, with the audio from the replay officials posted up on Football Zebras. Now, I have to declare an interest here. I was involved in putting that together, so I'll stay out of any comment here. But I don't know. Alex, did you see that at all?
I haven't taken a look at it. I will now. I have been in the replay booth, so there's a
link in the chat if you want to take a look at it.
Yes, I will. So if you ever get the chance to do it, don't assume that it's a guy watching TV. I mean, it is a chaotic situation to be a replay official, and there's times I've worked as a replay official that I wonder, at least mentally, I think I am more exhausted at the end of the day than I would have been on the field.
Absolutely. Any other question for Alex before we wind up? Another question in chat came in. Why did review bother with pass fumble after ruling that ball was recovered?
Because if it's an incomplete pass, we go back. I don't know if I didn't turn the audio on. If you heard, the referee made an announcement that if the play was to be reversed to an incomplete pass, that he had intentional grounding, which is debatable. Bill and I can get into a debate on that, and I think he makes a comment on the TV broadcast about that he would have disagreed with that aspect of it. But if it becomes an incomplete pass, then the referee has declared that he has intentional grounding. So we would review for that purpose, that to confirm that we have the fumble versus an incomplete pass. And a good announcement to make. I mean, if you have that component in your head, that is an announcement to make. If you have a game that has video replay, make every scenario known before it goes upstairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions for Alex before we wrap up? Last call. Okay, sounds good. Just then like to say thank you very much for Alex for that presentation, very informative, not only, as you say, for the referees and centre judges, but also a lot of learning points for the wing officials there as well. Also like to thank Frank Christensen and Bill LeMonnier for their presentations. I'll thank Bill later as he's no longer on the call. Just a reminder that the final session for this year's clinic is the same time next week. So please make sure you join then as well. And we will be getting the recordings up as soon as possible. And somebody asked earlier about a recording for part 2 of last week. I don't know what happened there, but I'll dig in and try and find out what happened there. So any other questions before we wrap up? No, just remains for me to say thank you very much for joining us and thank you for the guests. And we'll see you all soon. Goodbye. Frank, you want to say something, Frank, or just waving? No, it's just waving. Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.